All right. Are we all back? Where's he at? Outside? He needs to get back in here. Tell him to go get him. Tell him to come back in. Just want to make sure he hears all the information. Any questions up to now so far? Yeah. No. The question was, are there any set contingencies? Yeah, I guess inherently in our purchase agreement, we do have some set contingencies, appraisal, inspection. We use the home sale contingency. The buyer, that's a common one now. We even got a form for that, right? Subject to the sale of the property. That would be a contingency. It's such a common one now. We actually have forms for that. All right. Hey, good morning. There you are. Did you do a deal? Well, damn. If you'd have done a deal in here, I'd have got a commission on that as a referral. Well, I'm glad you got the deal done anyway. All right, so let's talk about how to clear a contingency. Clear, finger quotes. It's not on the outline, should be quotes, because it's also to satisfy, how to satisfy a contingency. First of all, we're going to bring a new word in. It's called ripened. This is a legal term. A ripened contingency is a contingency that becomes an action or a duty when it occurs, subject to my attorney's approval of the deal. So there's an action that requires there. Once that event occurs, it will become what we call an affirmative duty and requires further performance of the contract. So once you've cleared it, so if your attorney writes, I approve this deal, that contingency is now ripened, meaning he has satisfied it. Once he's satisfied it, the deal moves forward, and that action has now become an affirmative duty. He's completed it. If the duty does not perform, then there's no contract breach. I don't know how I can stress this enough, and I'm hoping you guys get it. Everybody kind of shake your head if you get it. If the contingency is not performed, then the contract becomes void. I'm not breach of the contract. Let's say I just didn't want to buy a house. Go into a purchase agreement, make an offer, they accept the offer, we go to closing, and I say, I'm not buying today. I'm in breach of contract, right? But let's say I make an offer subject to my attorney's approval of the deal within 48 hours, and he doesn't give that affirmation, then I get it. That's my escape clause. I'm out of the deal, and I'm not subject to a breach of the contract because that contingency never ripened. It never became an affirmative duty because he didn't do it. Now, because we have this thing called a ripened contingency, what? Question? Yes, this would be ripened. It means it's happened. You know, fruit ripens and now it's ready to eat. A contingency ripens means it's ready to be executed, or it's now part of the contract. And as you can guess, because we have a ripened contingency, we also have one called non-ripened contingency, or a non-ripened activity. If it does not ripen, the contingency may allow the benefiting party to cancel the contract without further performance and without being in breach. Let's go back. Hold on. Subject to my attorney's approval of the deal. If he writes a letter saying, I disapprove of this deal, then it's a non-ripened contingency. That allows me to get out of the deal without a breach. All right? When the condition that's qualified, meaning attorney's approval, fails to occur, there is no ripening of that qualified duty. That affirmative duty doesn't happen. So further contract performance is not required. This is at the heart, the essence of how contingencies work. All right? Now, we can waive contingency. You listening? I told you we're going to talk about it. Waiving a contingency in my opinion, is never a good idea. Waiving a contingency is one in which we would have a contingency written, but all of a sudden we've decided to remove the contingency, even though it's not ripened, it's not completed, or anything like that. All right? So let's say subject to my attorney's approval of the deal within 10 days. And then all of a sudden, my attorney and I discuss, and he says, well, I don't like the location. And I say, I like the location, so your answer is wrong. I'm going to go ahead and remove that contingency so that I don't get a disapproval from my attorney. Once again, what I said, it's never a good idea because you're going against your person you hired to instruct you. So I can waive that contingency. And what I would do is I would send something over to the seller saying, we are waiving the contingency to get the attorney's approval. Now, once I waive that contingency, the contract's back valid again. Now, down the road, I can't go, oh wait, I changed my mind, I want my attorney. No, I've already waived that right. So it's not really a good idea. The best time I can tell you when it would be good to waive is when you can assess the risk can be predetermined. And what I mean by that is where you have an idea that contingency, whether it's positive or negative for me, is of little consequence. All right. So suppose I put a contingency in here, and this is a stupid contingency, but let's say it happened. First-time home buyer may put subject to the approval of my parents within 10 days. Now, the parents, one may like it, one may not like it. They argue back and forth, and you ultimately go, you know what, I don't really care. I like the house, so I'm going to waive it. But what's really the risk? The risk is my mom doesn't like the house. Oh, well, it's not her house anyway. It's my house, and she'll come visit me whether she likes the floor plan or not. So that risk can be predetermined, and it might be okay to waive a contingency like that. First of all, I think that's a stupid contingency. Don't laugh. All right? Are you laughing with me or at me? At me? Okay, that's cool. But that gives you an idea where you can actually predetermine the risk of waiving the contingency. For instance, would never be a good idea to waive the contingency for an inspection, even though we have that box. You guys know that, right? In the purchase agreement, we have a box subject to inspection or waives the right of a contingency. That is what we're talking about here. They're waiving that contingency. The inspection contingency that is inherently in our purchase agreement can actually be waived by checking that box A rather than box B. I waive my right to an inspection. Well, if the risk can be predetermined, let's go through this. Any of the investors in here that like to rehab? You? All right. Have you ever done a complete rehab down to the studs? Yeah. Did you have the house inspected? No, you didn't. Why? Because you knew you were going to, that risk was already predetermined. You're not going to go in there and try and save that kitchen island or save that paneling from the 1970s house. You know you're going to strip it all down to the studs and re-drywall and do the whole thing. So that risk is already can be predetermined or pre-calculated. So there is a reason that you might waive the risk, waive the inspection. Why spend the money for him to tell you that the faucet doesn't work when you're taking all the plumbing out or redoing the kitchen anyway? So I don't like the idea. I've only done about, I would say, a handful of deals where the inspection was waived. All right, because that risk can be predetermined. Here's another inspection contingency, and we waive this one a lot. The boundary survey. Anybody ever done one where they've waived the survey? Yeah, that happens quite a bit because you're buying a house down in the inner city where the houses have been 100 years, and we know where the fence line is and the alley and the street, so we kind of know the property. And there have been many times I've seen surveys waived. That's a contingency. Subject to a boundary survey, you approving that. so that you know you're actually buying the 8 acres. I've seen it waived before. All right. So waiving a contingency, I'm not a big fan of ever doing. We have done it. It can inherently be done in our purchase agreement, or we can actually waive a contingency that we have written in because we just want to. Once again, go back to the stupid example of subject to my parents approving. They don't really approve, but I don't really care. All of a sudden, I've decided, hey, I like the house. If they don't, I'm going to waive that contingency. The only thing you remember is once you waive a contingency, right, exactly, purchase agreement becomes in full force or subject to any of the others that you might have in place. All right, good. Need to make another phone call? We're going on break. Stay in here and do it, because if you do it in here, I get a referral, right? Don't go anywhere. We're going to come right back.